Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for our recap of the Tour of Flanders men and women's race, brought to you by our show partner, Join Cycling. I am on the move. I'm gassed, Benji. Wall-to-wall cycling action. I think this is the best day of cycling I've watched this year. Both of us are traveling and we were locked in. No one speaking to us. You sent everybody away. I was just sitting in the corner of a hotel and we were just watching this whole race from start to finish. We'll start with the men's race first. As you know, 270 kilometers from Bruges to Oudenaarde. The first 125 Ks are flat with not too much cobbles at all. Then they do the Claremont and the No Paterberg. A hill zone eventuates with also some harder tarmac climbs, and then the real final starts with the second Claremont, which is a 4-minute climb, 3 minutes of hard cobbles, followed by the Paterberg, which is very hard, 300-meter, 11% climb. Then the Koppenberg, also very hard. And then they go back, do a loop, and do it all again. Claremont, Paterberg, cresting about 14 Ks from the finish. Good weather conditions, 14 degrees Celsius, light winds, unlikely to be splits. Any news? Restart, Benji. I didn't see the start. I was in the air.
Well, you were in the air. You were on RVV day. You are traveling. Like, I didn't even ride my bike on RVV. I hosted a watch party in a Spanish hotel with 50 seats. I'll say 10 people showed up, but hey, one of the people there was an ex-pro cyclist, so it was a pretty good watch party.
We'll take it.
Nonetheless, early breakaway. No news before the start, in my opinion. I didn't notice much, gotta say. Early breakaway. Elmar Reinders, Alessandro Romele. We mentioned him a couple of times before, which is like an Italian young punchy type. And he was very happy, by the way, later in the race to be the first rider crossing the first out of Quaremont. He was like attacking the breakaway to do that. Looked pretty cool. Connor Swift in the breakaway. Ineos tried a couple of times. They tried with Bob Jungels, with a couple of riders, eventually got in the breakaway with Connor Swift. And when I see Ineos in the breakaway this year, I think, okay, what are they cooking? Because usually they're cooking something up this year. I've loved their tactics this year, and I gotta say, this year, I love the part of it, certainly. Let's talk about it later. Next to them, Sean Flynn and Timo Rosen from Picnic Postinel. Townsend from Q36.5, that's a guy that punctured in, I think, E3. Marco Haller as well, who's been a pretty well-known name in the sport of cobbling these days.
He got in the break in Roubaix last year.
Exactly. And did he not top 10 RVV by going in a breakaway the year that Terpstra won?
Haller, I'm telling you, Tudor are underrated. Like, we don't talk about Tudor enough. Haller gets in every break he wants to, and Trenton's still class.
I once met Marco Haller when I was a student in Kortrijk at university, when the E3 Heidelbeke was hosted next to Kortrijk in Heidelbeke, and he was asking the directions to, I think, a specific part of Kortrijk when he was wearing his Katusha kit on the bike. So that's a useless fact for you. There you go. Anyway, that was the breakaway. Behind the breakaway, we've got the specialties. We've got the chasse patate, which is what we love. Lots of people keep asking in the comments, what's a chasse patate? It's basically riders that try to join the breakaway, but get stuck halfway through and drop back to the peloton. That's the textbook example here with Max Walker and Jens Reinders from EF and Wallonie-Bruxelles Wagner Bazin, or whatever that team is called these days. That is the situation. Those guys wave back to the peloton. That's our breakaway. And I'm thinking, cool breakaway. Curious about Ineos, but this will be mostly irrelevant for the rest of the race. And first out of Quaremont, don't expect much to happen. Bit of a positioning towards the run-in, but it's all about the sprint towards the Eikenberg now.
No, there's one thing that I thought was strange. No, there's one thing I don't understand this, why Bjerg was pulling with Dillier.
Ooh,
and that is all. And listen, Visma were maybe a victim of it at Dwars door Vlaanderen, and it can happen. That's all about salaries, and Pollitt should be pulling, not Bjerg, based on this season's classics. I would trust Bjerg more in the pre-final to pull than Pollitt.
And especially after Pollitt crashed so hard at Dwars door Vlaanderen.
Yeah, exactly.
While Bjerg was in the breakaway and strong together with Rasmus Soyberg.
Yeah.
In that race. So
I was
the combination
really
of that.
Surprised.
Agree. Certainly agree. I'll throw it back to you for a second, because Eikenberg, sprint in the peloton towards the foot of the Eikenberg. We know the zone. We spoke about it in the preview. Eikenberg to Valkenberg is a zone where we saw the anticipation zone, the zone where teams that are not UAE, that are not Alpecin, try to attack. But even before the Eikenberg, we have the first monumental moment in this race. Crashes, Jenno Bergmoes, Johnny Narvaez, but also one of our 2 top favorites. Who hit the ground, my friend?
Mathieu van der Poel crashes hard. He looked shaken up. He was stretching his neck a lot. I was really, it was Bora waved across. So this was just, everyone's just chopping through super fast. It was, the Kruisberg descent, maybe, I don't know, but super fast road. Everyone's big ringing, waving over like a sprint lead out. Bora come across, and I just knew it's like, okay, so the first team that gets waved over will be all right, Trek. Second team, Visma, it's all right. Third team in that pinch point on the gutter, Sweeney makes a mistake. Everyone's getting squeezed off, and Van der Poel and half of Alpecin go down. Vermeersch and Wellens go down. So literally, like the premium domestiques of UAE, really far back. Van der Poel gets lucky, sort of, in that it could have been worse. Also, not ideal either. So, like his team, like no one's going to talk about. There needs to be a whole article. Edward Plancart today. Don't know what he's paid, but he then spends the next 20 minutes bringing Van der Poel up while the race goes completely apeshit in front. And so I just want to give a shout out to the Alpecin Urukai today. They did it again.
Yep, they did it again, and it was not easy. All these teams are sprinting towards the first important climb of today's race, the Eikenberg. And an Alpecin train of 2 riders, maybe 3, I think 1 came back later, is trying to help Mathieu van der Poel get back a gap of a minute. Like, it's not 20 seconds. It's a ridiculous gap. So that happens. There's a couple of other riders hitting the ground. Tim Wellens was also involved in that crash, so that's taking away from a potential lead out of Tadej Pogacar, but Wellens has not been looking that well this week anyway. Ronde van Vlaanderen dropped on the Knokteberg, I'm pretty sure you told me. I had looked over that. Some others involved. Narvaez was also involved in the crash of Jenno Bergmoes, so that's 2 riders from UAE gone in these crashes as well. And mostly due to the 3?
Well, yeah, Wellens, Narvaez, and Vermeersch.
Vermeersch as well, yeah. Forgot about Vermeersch.
That's the whole lead out. That's the Quarmont lead out, right?
It actually is. That's their lead out for the Quarmont. Then how much do you think without this crash they would have all been there? Because I'm not sure Wellens would have been.
I'm not. Wellens, first of all, it's so hard. It's like, it's something that, me and you would do, Benji, if we were playing like PCM. And it's people say it's slightly not PCM. It's true. Like, you can't be like, okay, before second Quarmont, we're going to get 7 riders in a line and we're going to go one by one. But that's not how it works. It's not how it works in a classic. No. Like, there's so many people chopping you out of the wheel, losing positions. And so I was kind of skeptical it would happen in the first place, Benji. But then I knew it was definitely not happening because Vermeersch, they never came back. Vermeersch eventually came back, didn't play a part in the race. Wellens was gone. Narvaez, I never saw him again. And this is why Mikael Bjerg had a great race today. He was pulling early, and now Poggy is looking very isolated. Van der Poel's not there. Poggy's got a Morgado who can't position, Pollock can't position, and Bjerg who's been pulling all day. Van der Poel's got his whole team back. I was thinking, right in this zone, Benji, Visma and Trek could never have dreamed of a better pre-final situation where Poggy has the choice, do I follow Tej Benoot or do I have to let it happen? I mean, normally when Tej Benoot jumps, Poggy has to do nothing because Tim Wellens is in the wheel and UA have it under control. But it kind of didn't happen, Benji. Like, there was some Tudor moves. Jorgensen jumped a couple of times in the wheel. No one really went.
I feel like it's a combination of 2 things. First,
I think Benji's dropped out quickly. I think Mark Cavendish stole his internet. But there was a headwind in this phase. That's also why I think the teams weren't jumping or not committed to it. But still, Van der Poel took quite a while to come back. And then we had this next phase, the Wolvenberg or the Molenberg. And then we actually see some moves begin to go. We have Alpecin going into front position. Timo Kielich goes first wheel. Visma were in much better position with Van Aert as well going into Molenberg. Just in general, they Flick, they seem to be in better position compared to sort of the opening weekend Maelstrom. And then after the Molenberg going into the Paterstraat, we see some moves because, Van der Poel's not in position. Oh, he's back, but he's tired. Poggy's kind of, again, Poggy's having to gamble a little bit.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to accept that some anticipation is coming. One does, and it's kind of a par for the course in that Kung, of course, it's Stefan Kung. So Kung goes ahead, Tish Benoit, so Visma are happy, Vito Breit from Wanty, and
Ballerini.
Turnison or Ballerini?
Ballerini.
Yes. Ballerini goes for XDS Astana, who are having a good race. Trek want to be there. Vacek's not in great shape. No Kirsch. Søren Kragh. This is where Søren Kragh Andersen would have been in that. I'm telling you, he would have been in that move, but he's not. He's out for the spring, and it makes a difference because, Hola and Hermans, they take an eternity to get across.
And Hola's not the guy. No offense, he's a fantastic rouleur rider, but in RVV, that parcours is, in my opinion, too hard for him to be the perfect guy to be in that group. So he's like the type of domestique you'd use earlier in the race. In the same way that I wouldn't expect Kirsch to be the perfect guy in that group. So, yes, those groups are created. Ballerini, Braat, Kung, Benoit. Yes, we've got Hermans, Hola, Ganna, and Trentin creating a G3 behind that. And I like seeing Ganna, by the way. Do not forget, Connor Swift is in Group 1. Filippo Ganna is now ahead of the peloton from this point.
But I have no idea when that happened.
So
but the Ganna Trentin move I never saw.
There was no actual footage, I think, of the creation of it. But after the Paddestraat, I suddenly saw that group existing. So that's with about roughly 195k to go, is how I'm guessing in the race, if I know the profile of RVV right. But the responses in the peloton, you've got Alpecin, you've got UAE. It was UAE pacing. Morgado comes to the front of the Vulcan. It was suffering. Literally, obviously, you've said it already. He's been pacing all day. And after the Valkenberg, he comes back to the front, starts pacing again, and he paces towards Berchtenhout. Super impressive. I was shocked by that.
Performance, yeah.
Much of Van der Poel bike change. Was that because of something new?
I think there was something off from the crash. Maybe the bars were, not a flat tire, but maybe the bars are a bit dinged up. Something's not shifting perfectly anymore, and he picks the moment to change his bike, which is smart. And if you're getting back on your bike, you see summer is coming. I felt the wind on my face, the sun on my face this morning, and it's back. Spring is here. Then Join Cycling has the training plans for you. Maybe you're traveling a lot. Maybe you're world-weary travelers like Benji and myself, and you need to adapt your schedule. You don't have availability because you're hobnobbing with ex-professional cyclists like Benji keeps saying he was today.
Right.
Or maybe you're sitting in a hotel room like me.
I've got so many watts now because of Join Cycling. I was watching RVV with Mark Cavendish today.
Exactly. I was going to know, you should have said, Benji, you were watching it with someone who actually could do 1500 watts for 10, 15, 20 seconds.
Hey,
instead of speaking to a fraud like me.
I went to him and I did say, you and I are sprinting against each other at some point. And he seemed down, so who knows?
Just put him in the barriers. Who gives a fuck?
A few more training plans in Join Cycling and I might be able to get to the sprint in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. So all that freshness in the sprint, we'll talk about that later as well in this race. But yeah, if you want to go and check out Join Cycling's training plans, there's one for everybody. Go to the link down below in the show notes and click through for a 28-day free trial. There's one for classics, punchy courses, long climbs. If you're doing something like the Marmot or Falls in Australia or a long Gran Fondo in the US or Europe, there's plans for that as well, which is not meaning you have to do 20 hours a week. Go and check it out. Thanks to Join Cycling for supporting us throughout the year. For being our show partner. We really appreciate it, allowing us to do what we love, which is watch crazy good bike racing. So yeah, I think Benji, everyone's happy. I think Ineos happiest. Satellite rider Swift, who I think should have waited a bit earlier actually, because Ganna was getting sat on in that group. That group didn't get across. So Benoit, Kung, and Ballerini and co get across the breakaway reasonably quickly. The Ganna Trentin group takes a while because Hermans and Dan Hola are not full committing. They're really third tier order domestiques, and it's fair enough. It's Ganna, and so Swift, it takes a long time for Ganna to get across. But then when I
should
think
Connor Swift have waited?
It's tough to say.
It's a difficult one because on one end you might want him to get over the next climb and then be useful, or it's difficult to approach. I don't remember exactly where in the race it happened. I know it was around Berchtenhout Valkenberg, so maybe they were trying to get him over that climb first and then consider it. But at the end of the day, the groups do merge after the Valkenberg, and Ganop comes with Connor Swift. The gap actually expands to 1 minute 18, and on Berchtenhout, the next climb with 73 kilometers to go. Still no activities from the big guns, which I kind of expected. I was waiting on the Quaremont 2 for that to happen. But on Berchtenhout 2,
I thought Pog was going to jump on. Well, this is where Pog was also very relaxed. I thought maybe he panics here on Berendries. Like Morgado's dropped, Bjerg is cooked, Vermeersch, Vellens are not there, Narvaez's not there. The gap is going out quickly after Morgado drops. But he stays cool. He didn't have to. It would have been a mistake too, but still, we've seen other riders panic in that situation, and he doesn't.
But reality is, let's be honest, last year, Pedersen was ahead. Van der Poel absolutely shreds past him and wins by a large margin on a guy like Pedersen. The year before, Pogacar wins by minutes on people like the ones that are ahead. So, in my opinion, unironically, I would have had to see the first group have 2 to 3 minutes before I consider them dangerous. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, at least 3, really. It's not that they're dangerous, it's just that if Benoit has 3 minutes and somehow Visma can stay in the wheels for a period of time, then they're always going to be in an advantageous position. Even if Van der Poel has Hermans ahead, is he really going to pull all out with Van der Poel to close the 2-minute gap to his teammate? He's going to be less inclined to. So it still matters. But you're right, Benji, the lead-outs begin. Edward Plancard, Vermeersch pacing, then actually Visma start doing a lead out. And so eventually the teams start fighting for position, and the magic lead out from UAE we just see is not going to happen because Pollitt's been spent. Pollitt actually started to control. Pogacar's on his own in this race from about 58Ks, 60Ks to go. He's completely on his own. Now, the situation's still not that far out of hand. His team has done a good job keeping the race, I would say, under control. I don't think he was stressed, especially when he was sort of joking when Morgado came back. Second Quaremont, the lead-out goes wrong. Vermeersch begins the lead-out, but as I said, it isn't like a video game. Pogacar's not directly on his wheel, and Visma, who were in position with Trek and Van der Poel, they just let the Vermeersch wheel go. Pogacar has to close it back himself, and we see Van Aert. The moment of truth now. We all knew it was going to happen. Second time Quaremont, Pogacar bomber coming, Van der Poel's out of position, and we see Van Aert, Jorgensen in the wheel, suffering hard, Pedersen in the wheel as well, and it's the first 3 minutes of the Quaremont that are really hard, and but they stay there. They stay in the wheel, and now the race is looking a lot different from previous years in that Ganna's kind of cooked up front. The gap isn't so big to the breakaway. And Poggy hasn't just got rid of them. He hasn't just got an ally in Van der Poel. He's now got 2 very unwilling Visma riders who refuse to work. And I think that... and then there's Van der Poel. Then there's 2 Treks, Sturven and Pedersen there. And no one really knows what Poggy wants is everyone to roll a lovely pace line in between every climb. And yeah, that doesn't happen because Visma refused to relay. We see Evgeny Fedorov return from the group, which was kind of crazy.
When Fedorov showed up, I was like, what is Polar Bear doing in Arlington, Texas? Like,
Fedorov is good.
Like, top 20s in the last, 3 classics, just like Teunis. And by the way, my internet today in this fucking hotel, I'm losing it. Someone's jamming me. Who in the sport do you think would jam me right now? Because this is not okay. This is unfair.
But yeah, what did you... This is where already, Benji, I'm like, we got ourselves a classic. Because in all the previous classics, it's pretty much been 2 or 3 man strongman group, no more tactics, last hour and a half. Tyenberg and E3, I was like, all right, I know what's happening. Van der Poel's won. There'll be no more tactics. They work with him. It's over. And that's what happened. Here, Pog's isolated. There's teammates up ahead of the other guys in his wheel, and he can't just drop everybody on every climb.
Well,
sort of he can.
It gets interesting because in the next 30 minutes of this race, let's be honest, there were so many Pogacar attacks in the next 30 minutes of this race. It is ridiculous. You said it. On the Oude Quaremont 2, that Pogacar attack came. On the Paterberg, it was actually Mathieu van der Poel pushing a little bit, right?
Yeah.
With Pogacar trying to follow on one side of the road. Yes, when I look at this race, I see at a race where Van der Poel simply needs to try and follow Pogacar. Yeah. Do you think Van der Poel attacking on the Paterberg was an attempt like at the end of the Poggio of like, look, I'm still here, I'm feeling good. You're about to get down mentally because you ain't dropping me? Because I think it's a mistake like you. Because at the end of the day, it's all about putting fatigue into Mathieu van der Poel. This entire race for Pogacar.
Van der Poel has the most simple race strategy. Poggy will make the race harder than anyone could ever imagine. In fact, too hard. And he doesn't want to go to a sprint with a Pedersen. So you just, you know you're going to have someone attacking on every climb who will try to shake a Pedersen, Van Aert type guys. And so, it reminded me of his attack on Oude Kruisberg when he dropped Van Aert in 23, Benji. It's like, you're putting a knife into Van Aert here? And I was like, but Van Aert's not a threat. He's getting dropped. He's hanging on for dear life. Like, I mean, what is Van Aert going to drop you on Koppenberg coming up? I don't think so. Like, I would be worried about Koppenberg that Poggy rides away.
Exactly. And well, we see an attack on the next couple of climbs. We see on the Koppenberg, Pogacar attacking. By the way, in the meanwhile, rider by rider, that first group gets evaporated and starts dropping off the back. And that's what we see happening for the next half an hour in the race. Pogacar attacks on the Koppenberg. We see Van der Poel in the wheel. We see cracks in riders that were following on the Oude Quaremont. We see Wout van Aert in trouble. We see Jorgensen in trouble. Benoot, who was initially in that group ahead, is now literally in that group and is also suffering. So Pedersen looked like the strongest third rider in the race at this point, no?
Pedersen looked really good. He's also Trek, but I couldn't figure out the Trek's plan. And clearly Pogacar wasn't happy with like a stop-start race, random riders from teammates returning. Like, who likes being outnumbered? It's not a comfortable feeling. He wants mano-a-mano, group of three, rotating, and then he will show he's the strongest at the end. And we get to Tyenberg, and I was like, not the best climb for Pogacar. It's a sprinter's climb, in my opinion. It's a 30-second effort. He obliterates Van Aert. He puts him on like 12 seconds on Tyenberg from the front, with Van der Poel and Pedersen in the wheel. Pedersen was good in E3 on this climb. He's good again. I should say Kung and Benoot, I think, were ahead at this point. And I will say again, Benji, you, me, and Mo, we're the only people who respect Pogacar.
Mo?
I think we're the only people.
I don't want to give that guy any credit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but if I'm Pogacar, actually, I'm offended today. I would be offended. I would be offended if I was Pogacar. Because after Tyenberg, Pedersen, with Sturven in the group behind him, starts to relay with Pogacar. Pedersen started to relay, and I would have been offended. I actually probably would have abused him. How dare you?
But it's not just from Tadej Pogacar's perspective. Pedersen pacing in that group makes no sense even if Stuyven is not in the group behind. Pedersen should never be relaying here with Van der Poel and Pogacar. He saw what happened at Edri Harelbeke when it was just Van der Poel. Now it's Van der Poel and Pogacar again. Why the fuck are you relaying with these guys? Especially when your teammate is behind.
And also, they will keep relaying. They'll still just keep relaying. So they'll give you a free ride. So worst case, your teammate Sturven comes back, who can anticipate for you. And then they have to chase him with you in the wheel.
Yeah. I could not understand what Mats Pedersen was doing here. But I gotta say, I was intrigued by what was happening behind right now. Because, to be clear, I do need to declare where we are in the race right now. We're now past the Tyenberg. And we're moving towards, I think, the Oude Kruisberg before the Oude Quaremont and Paterberg. So 3 climbs to go from this point. Because I know this has been a pretty chaotic podcast. Me crashing out a couple of times with a Wi-Fi. Also next to that, 8 attacks of Pogacar. It's impossible to
Every climb
remember
he's going. Every climb.
which rider followed on which specific. My notes. I feel like I followed the race well, but I can't even tell when these riders are dropping and when they're attacking. But before the Oude Kruisberg, we see moves in the second group now, because that second group is as followed. You've got Van der Poel, Pogacar, Pedersen in front. Van Aert, Benoot, Jorgensen, Stuyven, and Koen still behind. So 3 riders of Visma. To be honest, outside of the Ronde van Vlaanderen, this is the best situation they've been in a classic this entire season. And that is because they sent Benoot up the road. That's because Van Aert looked amazing today. Genuinely unbelievable, amazing, unexpected to me how good he was today. And I can't wait to see this man at Roubaix next week, genuinely, because he was cooking. Now, Jorgensen, he blows up a little bit still at the end of hard races, what I feel like. Is that wrong?
I thought they were done. What we've learned from the previous editions of Classic San Remo, Tour of Flanders 23, E3, the 3 strong men go up the road. It doesn't matter what happens behind. You're out of the race. That doesn't happen. And this race goes to another tier when it's like, holy shit, Van Aert's actually coming back. And maybe it was also the case that Pedersen did stop to relay a little bit, and Pogacar and Van der Poel started to be a bit wary of each other coming into the Kruisberg and the last Kwarmont. But yeah, they come. Van Aert bridges across to that group, and because Stuyven wasn't relaying, Koen wasn't riding full with the 3 Vismas, and then gets to that group, and suddenly you have Van der Poel, Pogacar, Pedersen, Van Aert, and we get to, and then Van Aert anticipates.
Did you expect that?
I didn't expect it, to be honest. I thought he'd wait for Benoot and Jorgensen, but they were still working behind with Koen.
But like, before the last Oude Kwaremont, seeing a group that large in this RVV, I would have never expected it before.
With 4 different teams. With teammates
and
close with pressure behind.
And especially because these riders were not ahead. I expected Wout van Aert, Benoot, Jorgensen, Stuyven and Pedersen to be in Narnia by now.
Yeah. So a really crazy race. We have no idea where Group 3 is. We get to the last Kwarmont. Van Aert's anticipated. Van der Poel, we get the tell. That Van der Poel doesn't feel so good. Before the last Kwarmont, you already see it, because there was an anticipation of Van Aert in some mid-phase of the race. Van der Poel was on it. Snap, close it for Pogacar. When Van Aert does this anticipation, Van der Poel flicks him straight away before Kwarmont. That's the first tell. And then on the last time Kwarmont, if you listen to this podcast, you wouldn't have been surprised. Pogacar does the business on everybody and obliterates them off the wheel. Because it was a hard attritional race, and eventually he didn't get worked over by multiple teammates, not that much. Like Trek and Visma never really made it happen. And to be honest, I wasn't surprised.
Firstly, I want to go back to what you said about Wout van Aert. Him anticipating this, genius move. Being ahead of the action, Van der Poel and Pogacar are seeing themselves as the opposing favorites. They will look at each other to close Wout van Aert here. Pogacar is the more likely one to end up doing the lead into the Oude Kwaremont because he really wants to make a move there. And we see that happening, like you said. But it was like every single climb when Pogacar attacked, I felt like we saw Mathieu van der Poel going from looking very good to looking pretty good to looking good. Oh man, his head is suffering. But I gotta say, I wasn't sure whether Pogacar would drop him on the last Oude Kwaremont, despite having confidence in Pogacar winning before this race. And that's what made this race so good.
Take Benji off the list.
I just enjoy cycling, buddy. Come on, let me enjoy cycling.
The Pogacar respect list.
Well, I was the only man defending Pogacar's chances in Belgian media the other week.
Imagine if it was like Stuyven or Benoot or something, or Koen, like, that followed him. It was building up. That would have put it, Benji, you're right. It would have put it into all-time category if you have that sort of upset last time Kwarmont. Doesn't happen, unfortunately, and Pogacar goes away. Deserved, you must say. But the surprise on Kwarmont is that Van der Poel almost full cracks. He's fucked.
Yeah.
Van Aert goes past him, and then Van der Poel's just hanging on to Van Aert's wheel for dear life. The race wasn't over, technically speaking. Pedersen, Stuyven, Van der Poel, Van Aert, 2 riders of the same team, one guy with absolutely nothing to lose who doesn't care about podium, Van der Poel, and Van Aert's the one most willing to pull and suddenly looks the freshest. And they had to close it down more before the Paterberg, but they couldn't. I think they do Paterberg more or less the same time as Poggy, but then at the top he's just fresher, and the gap goes from 12 seconds on Quarmont. It was only 12 seconds on Quarmont to, I don't know what it was on Paterberg, 18, and then it goes to 28 seconds, and then everyone's playing for podium, unfortunately.
It's true, and after the Paterberg, you would think, okay, you've got 4 riders chasing, got 1 rider up front. I think there's an effect of Group 2 syndrome here. I think there's also an effect of not being able to have much left, because Mathieu van der Poel was doing the shortest turns I've ever seen in my life from Mathieu van der Poel. That man was completely cooked, which it shows the amazingness of someone trying to go so hard for the victory, trying to follow Pogacar on every climb, up to the point that he doesn't care about getting second or third, really, because at the end of the day, if he doesn't win, he's going to be unhappy. So we see him trying that, and he parquejos, like you said, on the Paterberg. It's maybe a bit harsh saying parquejo. I would say parking, but it looked like that for a little bit. But when Pogacar expanded that on the flat afterwards, this was a super impressive ride. 8, 9 attacks, roughly. He wasn't just attacking on the cobble climbs. He attacks after the time back on the flat. No?
On the flat, on shallow ones like Station's Strat, he's closing down Benoit and Jorgensen with 125 Ks to go himself, by the way. When the anticipations began, he's P5. He's isolated for an hour and a half with Trek and Visma having numbers. Now, I think Pogacar absolutely deserved to win this race. He does win this race. Pedersen wins the sprint behind comfortably, as is expected. Van der Poel hangs on for third. Van Aert is fourth. Sturven fifth after doing a lead out. Then there's a group behind of Kung and Benoit. Kung, I think, had attacked Jorgensen. Benoit was able to follow him. And then Benoit wins the sprint. Ganna wins the group sprint behind, which catched Jorgensen in the last 300 meters, which must be really bitter, I guess, for him, because, I think he deserved a top 10. But Ganna wins the sprint 8th, Garcia Cortina 9th, Ballerini, XGS Astana points lovers 10th, Turnison 12th. So, Astana's points. But Pogacar deserved to win. Strongest rider in the race. We all can see that. It was very obvious. I don't think he had to win today. Like,
what do you mean by that?
I think there is sometimes me and you try to create fictitious scenarios where if this rider did that, then this would have happened, and then the strongest rider wouldn't have won. I do think there's a way he doesn't win today if some riders played a little bit differently.
Oh, you don't mean that Pogacar would have been fine not winning today. You mean other riders could have won if they played it differently?
Yeah.
In what way? Because when I look at the race, I see Visma Lease bike. I don't expect them to win in more, like, their actions. I don't really see.
They can't win. How do they win? Because Van Aert can never win the sprint, and he can't get rid of Pedersen.
Well, can never win the sprint. You never know. After Wednesday, sprint. The doubts are definitely. Well, Pedersen's sprint hadn't looked that great before yesterday either.
Well, Pedersen's sprint looked pretty. I don't think anyone's beating Pedersen's sprint. No, I think Trek and Van der Poel could have won.
Okay. First of all, to me, when it comes to Van der Poel, Johnny Vermeer's pulling on maybe it was the Molenberg, one of those climbs. That was weird to me. Because then you're making the race harder. Or was that a pace where you try to prevent attacks?
I think that was in position like Molenberg. You hope there's a split behind because of a crash, like what they. I think, I'm not sure that was. There was an Edward Plancard maybe pacing a couple of times. I was confused by as well. I was like, are you accelerating or blocking? Because I was like, I thought you were blocking, but now you're pushing. Like, I know you don't want Quinten Hermans to take 3 minutes with Ganna, but no, it's more. I think if Van der Poel rides a completely negative race.
Yeah,
he has a bigger chance to win. And I think if Pedersen doesn't relay with Pog and Van der Poel, they probably stop. And then, remember, it looks a big gap. And of course, Pog by a minute, and I said he win by more than a minute. He wins by more than a minute. It's 12 seconds on top of last Quarmont. It's 12 seconds. Like, if you can, if Pedersen stops, then you play they could play the numbers. They had Sturven there. I don't know. Probably Pog still wins, Benji, but it could have been harder.
I think Pogacar wins in most scenarios. If not, I think probably all scenarios. But I agree that when it comes to Mathieu van der Poel, I don't see why he should attack on the second Paterberg. That doesn't make sense to me. But you also point out if he plays a completely negative race, and he just sits on the wheel of Pogacar instead of riding with him between the climbs as well, then doesn't that make the chances of Pedersen and Van Aert and Visma and Little Trek more? Because Pogacar might get frustrated at Van der Poel, then Stuyven might try to attack, then they both might not respond. That's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, but the perfect group won't form. They'll cannibalize each other. Someone else will pull. You can always close the gap back yourself. I think, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe you can't let a group of Stuyven and Benoit go up the road and just say, I'm not pulling.
You just said we make up fictitious scenarios. What if Van der Poel doesn't crash?
Exactly. And also the crash, who knows how much that affected him. But anyway, the second point is from Luke sent a quote in the chat that team manager Christoph Rudolph said that Van der Poel was sick in the run into this race. So this is a sports interview, I think, or article. And so yeah, Van der Poel does not use his fall as an excuse, but also he missed some training sessions with quite a serious bout of sickness. So that's not ideal. But yeah, overall, this Tour of Flanders was way better than I expected. It's the best Tour of Flanders I think I've watched since...
Since what?
Maybe better than the Asgreen one.
When did you like hardcore start watching Tour of Flanders? Discounting the ones you watched back afterwards.
2024.
Now, on a serious note, I think the 2022 was an amazing Tour of Flanders. The one that Pogacar dominated.
Yeah, because it was still a surprise then.
Then, if I look at earlier, Nick Nuyens winning when Cancellara melted on the Muur van Gerardsbergen back in 2010, maybe 2009, 2011, roughly. Well, you're looking at your size, you weren't even born then. But that was also an epic one because there was a real surprise at the end of that race. There's a couple of really good Tour of Flanders, bro. Like, there's a couple of really good ones. I really like today though. Because it wasn't. First of all, last year, to be honest, I didn't like the Tour of Flanders last year because it was a long solo and was witnessing greatness. The quote. I just don't care too much about it.
Turns was better than Van der Poel. He got blocked by a crash on the Koppenberg.
Well, that is a hot take.
Dylan Turns, I saw that fucker in Group 3 today coming back. I was like, I know he's sprinting for a top 15. Couldn't believe it.
No, like last year, witnessing greatness. I'm sorry, buddy, but that doesn't get me. To me, it's the fight, the intense fight until the end that you don't know which rider is going to win. Like, yes, I believe Pogacar was going to win today for most of the race. Did I doubt it a little bit at certain points? Sure, 100%. But at every second in the game, there was a potential play where Pogacar couldn't win. There was a chance that Mathieu van der Poel could follow. There was a chance that Visma did something crazy as well. There was a chance that
Trek play numbers.
Little Trek. Stuyven looked amazing today. Like, I also didn't expect that. And I think my best feeling after this Tour of Flanders is not actually related to this Tour of Flanders. It's the fact that next week we have Paris-Roubaix. Mathieu van der Poel, yes.
They do it all again.
Yeah, true. Mathieu van der Poel, I don't know, related to that sickness, what happens towards next week. Tadej Pogacar, first time Paris-Roubaix. It's going to be fun regardless of whether he succeeds at competing at the highest level against others. I would expect him to compete for the victory. I don't expect him to win, but that's for our preview. Won't spoil that. Mats Pedersen looks fantastic for it. Wout van Aert looks amazing as well today. Like, I expect a really good fight. Jasper Stuyven looks amazing as well.
I think the difference for Van Aert today compared to previous years, so like last year, right? He's always had the burst to follow the initial MVDP bomber. Even the ones that Pogacar himself isn't quite there. So Olympics last year. Was it Olympics last year? Am I correct? That Van Aert followed? Or Glasgow?
Yes, Montmartre.
He follows one bomber, but then fucked. Not in the top, crashes himself in Olympics, doesn't top 25. Today is like the opposite. He almost could never respond. Not almost. He did not respond on Timeberg. He got put on 12 seconds. I was like, oh, not looking good. The second time Quarmont's just completely cooked his legs. He like got stronger into the race relative to the other riders. Like last time Quarmont, he was still good. To me, for Roubaix, which is a more of a threshold effort, it's looking good for him.
And it's also, even the monument of Tour of Flanders has changed so much over the years, you know?
So hard.
Remember Alberto Bettiol winning, but in an attack on the last Quaremont on the most passive race I've ever seen in my entire life? That was the worst race. No, one of the worst cycling races I've seen in my entire life. That one. And that was just ridiculous.
I think,
Is that thanks to Poggi?
Yeah, I think I mean, I saw a stat on PCS that like the average weight of the like Flanders winners or top 10 is like way lower, or top 30.
Yeah.
And I think that's to do with tires, like Baldato said. I also think it's just to do with the general level and effective aerodynamics, in that the general level of climbers has gone up so much. So therefore, 65 kilo climbers now can push 380 for an hour, or if 65 kilo, if you can handle your bike and you can push 380 for an hour at 66 kilos, Pog can do more. That gets you pretty far on the flat too.
Yeah.
So you just can stay in the wheels. You're still keeping fresh on the flat, and then anytime it's uphill. Now, also Pog is the exception. Like if we do take Pog out of this top 10, Benji, it looks a lot like big boy classic specialist to me.
It does, but is that also because riders like Pogacar might not be focusing all out on this race? Because let's be honest, you've been preaching to our ears for the last
I'm telling you,
last
Roglic
6
would have
months.
beaten Pogacar today.
One day, Roglic.
I'm telling you.
I don't know about that, buddy.
Dude, Roglic, GP Dinar, Roglic, we will never forget you.
Talking about people I will never forget, who was at a certain point, I think it was maybe after the Paterberg, in the group with Paulus, I think, Arjen Levijns again.
He Buckmo's crashed. Yeah, Levijns. Yeah, he looks good. But yeah, the race was just too hard. I think maybe an hour too long.
Yeah.
But yeah, great edition of Flanders. Very, very excited for next week in Roubaix, where basically all of the top 10 all of the top 20 are going to be in that race, except for Benoit. And so, yeah, I can't wait to see them do it all again. I also would say Van der Poel was sick. I think everyone has an excuse. Everyone always has an excuse. That's the thing. Nothing's perfect in life. Like, Poggi had all his best domestiques crash today. Van der Poel crashed and was sick. Trek lost Søren Kragh Andersen to an injury all season, and Vacek has been sick too. They would have been there anticipating. Visma had no Laporte. The reality is, everyone has these issues, and most of the time the strongest rider just wins, and that's what happened.
Maybe this is a controversial topic to talk about, but for example, in races, rider does something wrong, rider crashes. Rider makes a mistake, chain drops off the thing. Is there a world in which the way certain teams or riders prepare for certain races could influence how vulnerable they are for sicknesses? For example, if a team focuses to get a rider at their leanest for a 4-week period instead of a 2-week period, does that make them more vulnerable for sickness for that longer period?
I could do. I'm not a doctor, but let's speculate anyway.
I thought you were.
Well, I guess good nutrition, sleep, recovery. I mean, these guys are pushing their bodies to the very limits, trying to get into the best shape possible. And, Flanders is also becoming a climber's race, or you got to be able to be very good on the climbs, not just on the flat, or have a good sprint after a long day. I don't know, Benji. I mean, it also could just depend. It could just be luck. Maybe Van der Poel just ran into the wrong person at the wrong time. Then again, I don't get sick. So I just don't.
Wait, the amount of times you've come to this podcast and said, I'm a bit crooked today.
Yeah. I don't get sick. Except, no, Roubaix, what was the year that Visma was shocking in Roubaix? and everyone was like, "You're so salty," but I
What do you
wasn't.
mean?
I
The
was.
year?
I was on my deathbed. I think it was but the year I drank water from the
Nah.
river. What was the year I drank? Was it 23? I think, yeah, when Van Aert punctured, it was like so. I literally drank river water, and I had a serious illness. That's the only time I get sick. Watch me now. I just traveled today. I'm tempting big fate. I'm gonna get tempting big fate now.
You're gonna get like
travel because most of the time I'm in Andorra with a dog. I speak to 2 people: my dog and my wife. And,
rabies.
and also, I do interact with a lot of farm animals.
You
like
actually do.
Feral cats and shit. I'm off topic.
Yeah, I enjoyed. Think that was pretty on topic.
Yeah, and also, yeah, I enjoyed. I'm happy to witness greatness for the last 15Ks. That's a good amount.
I agree, especially on a route where the last hill is with 15 kilometers to go.
Yeah. But I kind of think everyone's happy. I think everyone's happy.
I don't think much of Van der Poel will be happy.
True, yeah, not happy. But I don't think he'll have many regrets.
Yes.
Like we said.
I agree. Visma should be happy with the form that Wout is showing, but I think they'd rather have a podium than not a podium, to be honest.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Like, I think Visma haven't got better than 4th in this race for 5 years.
Is this the first time Pedersen is second at RVV?
Yeah.
The first time was when he was ahead in the race, right?
It helps to sprint. It helps to be able to sprint.
I think he wasn't sprinting the first time he did it. Wasn't he like ahead through to the breakaway from Barla style? Back when he was riding in the white and black little track kit? No, Trek Segafredo kit?
I can't recall. I'm just reading the book, The Chairman's Lounge, by Joe Aston. So I'm just copying the quotes from the cross-examination. I do not recall, to the best of my knowledge. Women's Tour of Flanders.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm lost. You should have seen the Dutch lunch I pounded today. It was unbelievable. It was like a shrimp croquette. Luke would have been like, that's
Bitterballen?
Nah, no better. Well, no, it was a croquette. 3 pieces of white bread, like toasted on. You know how your toaster has settings 1 through 4? Dutch always toasted it like 1, so it's just like slightly crisped. Obviously a soup.
Why?
I didn't ask them. They love a soup, and then tuna salad. Listen, I punched it. It was good. So
okay,
when in Rome.
I'm happy for you. Anyway, Women's Tour of Flanders. This race started off with a pretty damn shit moment, to be honest. We hyped up a rider so hard for this race based on her performance in the last couple of weeks, to be honest. Elisa Longo-Borghini had aura for the last 2 months. And I gotta be honest, after the men's race, I switched to the women's race. I had followed the tracker a little bit beforehand during the women's race. I look at the front ground, I'm like, okay, Kopecki's right there, world champs jersey. We see Bredewald right there, Van der Breggen right there. Wiebes is still there. We see other groups. Peters is right there. We see Lippert is there. Niewiadoma, Dijgaard. Where's his Italian champion jersey? Where's UAE at? Longo-Borghini had crashed early on in this race, and the favorite of this race is gone.
So shit. Well, I'm not sure she was technically the favorite. Maybe we moved her into it, but she was definitely up there with Kopecky, and for us, she was the clear-cut favorite. And yeah, that really, really sucks for her. I don't know how it happened exactly. I really think she would have won at a canter. Watching how this race panned out, that makes me even more resolute in that belief, but woulda, shoulda, coulda. And unfortunately, she's out of the race. And what we see, Benji, is what you were describing Bettiol Tour of Flanders win. This must have been very passive. It looks very passive to me, and there's an explanation for that. When you got Kopecky and Vollering plus Wiebes, SD Works had like a mixed strategy where you want to get basically a group of 8 and you'll have 3 in it, or a group of 5 and you have Vollering, Kopecky in it. Good situation. With Kopecky and Wiebes, do you really want to make the race as hard as possible? Why would you? You got the fastest absolute sprinter. You got the fastest classic sprinter. Why have you got to do anything?
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. You look at all these teams that are here, and even like Niewiadoma, she's not going to attack for far out. She wants the Paterberg to be the type of climb that she goes. Dijgaard is the one for that team that tries to go. But We see some moves though. We see a little Trek trying to roll attacks. Van Dijk tried a few times, but we see as D-Works kind of responding that in the same way you'd expect them to do in the first place, like we always see. Beta following that move, and then eventually it starts being closed. We did see a weird crash though, with about 38 kilometers to go. I think it was FDJ Suez leading into a cobble sector, into a turn, and I felt like Amber Kraak was, instead of like sitting down into a cobble sector, was standing on her bike into the cobble sector and lost balance doing so in the corner and just slipped, taking out Shabby. But also, was it pulling Ferrand Prévot that fell relatively softly onto Shabby?
Yeah, Ferrand Prévot held up. She didn't crash. The problem was the bikes were entangled, so she couldn't get the bike out of Shabby's bike frame, and so she's held up for a bit. But still, nothing really happens. Like, the group's still big. She's got Wolf ahead, who just starts to she follows a couple of moves, stops any anticipations happening. Trek were trying to get something going, which makes sense. Trek needed to get riders ahead. They had numbers in the group, so Henderson, of course, it made sense to jump. And Ferrand Prévot comes back, and still not much like happening except by kind of attrition / SD Works just never miss it, Benji. Whenever there's finally an anticipation that gets a gap, they always get the best of it. Hansen goes, Bredevold is immediately in the wheel, and Bredevold, first of all, if that group goes to the line, de facto, Bredevold will win.
Yeah.
And so SD Works then have Kopecky Wiebes marking wheels behind. It's a problem. Then Royce is looking at Lippert. Lippert's looking at Royce. Ferguson's had to control it, but she's like literally 18 years old. She's tired and dropping, and that's what happens. Lippert goes all out to try and solve it. This situation with Bredevold ahead. Wiebes is gone though. Wiebes gone, Ferguson gone, and now it's really a selective group. What did you think of Pieterse then? I think Pieterse ruins her race here, Benji.
Yeah, I think so as well. First of all, I want to say about Liana Lippert, I feel like we've often seen her be very, very good in races, but then not be competitive for the actual victory, right? Because she's had so many races where she had brutal attacks.
Last year she was stomping in Worlds.
True. That's a perfect example. Also in a couple of Amstels before, I'm pretty sure. So she's got that Nivea Doma kind of kick on the steep climbs, but she's actually had a sprint and won a sprint against Kopecky once, but the majority of time she's not the favorite to win a sprint at the end of a race after such a move. And she does make that move on the Oude Kruisberg, like you said, and it does shred the group, but at the end of the day, she doesn't necessarily get a result that she wants, because that group will not go that much further. And yeah, Wiebes is dropped, but Kopecky's still there with multiple riders from SD Works. That's not going to be perfect. But Pieterse then counters towards the Holton. So if my geography is right, Oude Kruisberg is around the Holton. The Holton is that relatively curvy road where trucks pass riders too closely on the road, by the way. I nearly got hit by a truck there last year, so police trucks, watch out. So on the Holton, is that the one with that's the one with the white black tower on the right side of the road with, I think, a hotel restaurant, I think, right?
I'll take your word.
Why am I asking you?
Yeah, I'll take your word for it, Benji. There's some miscellaneous restaurant. I mean, all these roads look the same. So,
yeah, they kind of do around these parts. But like Pieterse counters there and closes the group with Lippert from behind. And in doing so, you said it, she spends a bullet. And spending a bullet costs. What would have happened if Pieterse doesn't do that? Would the group have closed it themselves, or would she have been stuck behind forever?
I think they closed it like on the Claremont. She should have saved the bullet for the Claremont. Easy to say in hindsight, but definitely there's another isolated rider here, Ferrand Prévot, and she's like, or Nivea Doma, they're going to solve this uphill on the hardest moment of the race coming up. So that's what they do. They get to Claremont. Royce was leading it out initially, and then Ferrand Prévot basically goes all out. Kopecky's immediately in the wheel. It doesn't look like it's so easy for her, but she never looks like dropping the wheel either. Lippert's there. Nivea Doma follows as well. And so you have a group of 4. Lippert, Kopecky, Nivea Doma, and Ferrand Prévot. And we shouldn't take for granted, Nivea Doma's crashed in Strade. I remember she put the photos on Instagram. Like, she crashed really hard, and she's back in good shape, which is good. But yeah, Pieterse, Luke's reminded me, she also crashed today. She had bad road rash on her left side. That group 2 is never coming back. The four cooperate going into the Quarmont, and then on the Quarmont you see Kasia. She has to. Her and Lippert, they got to get rid of Kopecky. It's the hardest. It's the only climb left. They go all out, and Kopecky is strong enough to hold on. Kopecky had been a bit wary of pulling all out. It's not like she came before the Paterberg. It's not like she was just pulling all out. After the Paterberg, she's like, let's get this going. No more climbs left. None of you can sprint. Well, Lippert maybe half can sprint.
The thing is, like with this group, you kind of never know what's going to happen because on paper, yes, Kopecky's the best sprinter here by quite a bit.
Which can sometimes be a problem.
Yeah, true. It can be a problem. I'll get to that in a second. Wait. Calma. Ferrand Prévot has done okay sprints, not on Kopecky level. Lippert, she's beaten Kopecky, but then Kopecky said she had a half a tire in terms of air, not in terms of the physical tire. Okay, well, except it was a Merlier Belgian excuse. So Lippert has beaten Kopecky in your eyes. But that was an uphill sprint finish, which is slightly different than this. Then I look at Neviadoma. That's the clear one where she cannot trust her sprint. So I'm looking at the last 10 kilometers. I'm thinking, okay, Kasia, you can't go too early either. You got to attack here, but it has to be at the perfect moment. And I was thinking, okay, last kilometer, you got to make it so that the others have to look at each other of who's going to respond to Kasia's attack. That's the moment, in my opinion, to make a potential move there. And we see them going towards last 6 kilometers, last 5 kilometers, 4 kilometers. They're working together. The gap on the others behind is now to 40 seconds, I'm pretty sure. So it's expanding. They're in Narnia. What happens?
Well, yeah, you're right. If you're Kasia, the first move's never going to work, right?
True.
So you have to be like, the way I win this race is the second move. And I hope she has to hope that Ferrand Prévot, goes again, and then she goes again and counters off that. There's always a first mover disadvantage. The problem is she goes at like 700 meters to go without full commitment, and it's to be honest, it's the worst of both worlds. Kopecky's quickly in the wheel. Ferrand Prévot's now like, do I really counter off that? I think Lippert should have stopped pulling earlier. This is like very hindsight.
Yeah.
She has Royster in the group behind, and she's not the clear-cut favorite in the group. I mean, to me, it improves the Movistar win chances. It definitely decreases their podium chances. She's guaranteed a podium if she goes to the line with this group.
That is true. But I do want to get on Kasia's defense here for a second. I'm okay with attacking with 700 meters to go if it's with full commitment. I agree that it is the first move, and therefore it's going to have a disadvantage. But at that point, with 700 meters to go, it is clear to me that Lippert will not go for an attack. It is clear to me that Ferrand Prévot is also trusting her sprint here against Kopecky. So she can only do that from this point onwards to potentially win the race. So with 700 meters to go, attacking is fine for me, because if you do it with 500 meters to go, 400 meters to go, Kopecky will instantly follow you, because she'll be like, okay, she's leading me out, right? So 700 meters to go is where there might be a little bit of doubt of, if I react now, I might be reacting too early, because then someone else might still try something. So I'm okay with the 700 meter thing if it was an all-out attack.
Anyway, Kopecky closes it. Niewiadoma stops. Kopecky leads out the sprint, and Kopecky obliterates everybody. They can't get out of her draft. Lippert wasn't in the wheel. I don't think she beats Kopecky anyway, or gets close. But certainly, if you have to sprint in the wind with the equal amount of time as Kopecky, because Ferrand Prévot had stolen the wheel of Kopecky, it didn't help. And yeah, Kopecky wins Flanders again. Double world champion victory today in Flanders, which I don't know if that's happened before. And Kopecky wins her third Ronde van Vlaanderen.
Last year, bro. Van der Poel and Kopecky.
Wow. Yes, it happens all the time. And so Kopecky wins. The Belgian crowd in the square were going crazy, throwing beer in the air. That was really cool to see. The home favourite. Ferrand Prévot hangs on for second ahead of Lippert. In third, Niewiadoma fourth. Kim Pina fifth, wins the group sprint behind, a minute 13 behind, so they really played.
That's great.
The sprint, yeah, great result. She's literally top 10 rider in the world. 18 months ago, she was like in Mauritius, man, just cruising around.
what is she? Because we've seen her compete and win us a relatively hilly mountain stage at the Giro Dawn last year ahead of Longoborghini and Kopecky when they were fighting for bonus seconds for the GC. I'm pretty sure from the breakaway, Pinar won that. We've seen
She
her
was
win.
third on her feet.
Yeah, like what type of rider is she? Because she's so versatile.
Just a good, strong, or just like a Mauritius version of Kopecky.
Where would she finish in the sprint if she was in Group 1?
Oh, worst case, second.
Okay.
And I think she's stronger at sprint than what Lip and Ferrand Prévot have. In my opinion. So yeah, but she didn't make it. But still, she's literally like top 10 rider in the world. AG Insurance found gold with her.
Correction.
But
Correction. You were right. RVV was not won by Kopecky last year. It was Roubaix.
Yeah,
so
at
no
least
world champs.
Lamborghini won it. Yeah, that's right.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
I'll round out the top 10. Letizia Borghese, another strong classic from her. 6th, and Nomi Rug crashed. Maybe EF. I would have liked to have seen if Rug could have followed on the Paterberg Quarmont. Ellen van Dijk 8th, Puck Pieterse 9th, Marlon Reusser 10th in the sprint. Van der Breggen was the last of that group, so yeah, SD Works also had her as a card to play. Kind of a lot of familiar names there, frankly. And for Roubaix, yeah, Voss was off the pace. Voss finishes 40th on 4 minutes. Don't know if she was held up by a crash or not. She didn't do Dwars Dour in the week. So I think for Roubaix, yeah, Kopecky, Wiebers.
Yeah.
This is going to be good. And then it's going to be Ferrand Prévot, Voss, Pieterse. Trek looks strong. I think, I'm not going to do the preview, but Ellen van Dijk 8th here is much better than I expected on a not flat course.
And on one end, I do believe that's because of the slight passiveness of how the race was ridden.
Sure.
But she still was one of the better riders in this Roubaix race in the past. So I expect her to be really good next week. Now, we're not going to preview Roubaix yet, but I'll look at today's race and
there's minutes between that group and the next groups.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder, around like Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, how do we see that at a Roubaix where it's not like, I do believe there is an inherent advantage to her on hills versus a flat parcours.
Yeah, it's the trade-off. Like, she needs the hills. You could see on the Koppenberg she was riding, or one of the climbs, she was in the gutter and the other riders couldn't ride in the gutter as well as she does, like kind of Van der Poel. So she has that benefit on the cobbles in Roubaix, but like you say, Kopecky has the absolute power. She's the bigger engine, so it'll be interesting. But then there's more draft advantage, so that's why, yeah, I just can't wait for Roubaix next weekend. I think it's gonna be crazy.
Me neither. And the most important part about it is, I'll have FiberNet internet in Belgium next week for 2 weeks, so we won't have dropouts on my end for finally. Right. And another update: in August, it should be installed in the UK as well. So in 3 months, we should have fantastic internet for the rest of my life.
You'll be conscripted to fight like a war about trade tariffs by then. You think you're going to get
Jesus Christ?
You think you're going to have wire insulated in your house? You're going to have wire installed in August? Don't think so.
Wow.
Andorra. We don't. Right. You know Andorra got done. There's tariffs on Andorra.
Really?
Yes. Well, my wife said to me, I said, that's a jab. No way. SD Works. I mean, no one's been more negative about SD Works than maybe me in terms of Vollering in the Tour de France last year. They just come out this season. They just dominate every major race. Yep. Except, so they win everything still.
But I wish Vollering was here. It's a shame she isn't. Like, I don't know why she's... Like, it's probably schedule-wise that she wants to have a training camp and then dominate the Ardennes, which, if she wins all 3 Ardennes, it's going to be fine. Like, we're going to look back at that being fantastic. But my heart wanted Vollering here as that extra level to it. Because that makes the finishing victory a little bit more prestigious. That makes sense?
Yeah, and her plus ELB, we just want to see all the best riders, going toe-to-toe. So ELB not crashing would have, yeah, with what I saw on the Qua mod, I think ELB would have gone solo. My personal opinion.
I agree.
But she crashed. So
And that's
how it
cycling.
is. That's how it is. A bit of a so yeah. Thanks for listening to our Tour of Flanders recaps. As a reminder, our weekly show will be on Tuesday, and then we will have the Tour of Roubaix. Fuck, I'm turning to Sean Kelly. The Tour of Roubaix for sure. Now it's going to be great. Great crack. We're going to see Tadej Pogacar. Pogacar will go now. Now he won Paris-Nice, and I won Paris-Nice many times, and then he's going to win Paris-Roubaix. We're going to do that on Thursday. The women's race is on Saturday, which we always like, and the men's on Sunday, but we'll have the preview on Thursday. And we won't be doing daily Basque Country podcasts. We will cover them ad hoc throughout the week like we did with Catalunya when we have the weekly on Tuesday, the Roubaix preview, etc., etc. So it's not going to be great stages every day. No offense, Thibaut Nice. He's going to win a couple.
We'll talk about Thibaut Nice in the weekly next week.
True, yeah.
It's partially because, like, behind the scenes, I'm traveling back from this event in Mallorca, and there's a time trial tomorrow, so it's a perfect day to not have a daily recap, for example. And you're traveling as well, so we're trying to make it work to get you the best possible podcasts. And to be honest, an ITT recap podcast, we chat shit for half an hour, whatever happens in the race. But I think you'd rather have a qualitative podcast in the end.
I think we made a decision. So when we started the pod, not to get too behind baseball, but when we started the pod, we wanted to cover every single race possible, right? And yeah, we
started with the GP Plouay.
Yeah, we did everything, and we've made the decision. Maybe I think at the start of last season that we want to do this for a very long time.
Yeah,
and to do this for a very long time, sometimes you have to skip a Romandy prologue on a Monday afternoon recap. Sorry. So that's just reality. And I think that's a worthwhile trade-off. For me, it is personally.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Because don't worry, we ain't leaving.
Not with races like that. I'm invigorated by the racing today.
Yeah.
Really invigorated. I really loved it. It was so good. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Hope you enjoyed the recap, and we'll see you, as I said, with the weekly on Tuesday. Until then, ciao, ciao.